In recent years, resilience has dominated supply chain thinking. That is understandable. The COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical disruption, climate events, cyber threats, and logistics shocks have all exposed just how fragile global supply chains can be. But resilience only takes us so far. A resilient supply chain is designed to withstand disruption and recover. It absorbs the shock, stabilizes, and returns to something close to its previous state. Antifragility goes further. An anti-fragile supply chain does not just survive disruption. It learns from it. It adapts because of it. It becomes stronger, smarter, and more capable after stress. That is a very different ambition. The goal is not simply to protect the supply chain from every possible shock. The goal is to design systems that can use disruption as a source of insight, innovation, and improvement. In other words, anti-fragile supply chains do not just bounce back, they bounce forward. Traditional supply chains were often designed around efficiency. Lean inventories, single-source suppliers, globalized production, and just-in-time delivery all helped reduce cost and improve flow. But those same design choices also increased exposure. When everything works, lean and globalized systems can look highly efficient. But when something goes wrong, a factory closure, a port blockage, a cyber attack, a transport strike, or a geopolitical shock, those systems can quickly become fragile. Fragile systems break under stress. Resilient systems recover from stress. But anti-fragile systems improve because of stress. That is the key shift in thinking. Instead of asking, how do we get back to normal? Anti-fragile organizations ask, what did this disruption teach us, and how do we improve the system because of it? That might mean redesigning the supplier base, changing stock policies, improving data visibility, decentralizing decisions, or investing in flexible capacity. The message is clear. Do not just build systems that bounce back. Build systems that bounce forward. Anti-fragile supply chains share several important traits. The first is redundancy by design. In traditional efficiency thinking, redundancy is often seen as waste. But in anti-fragile thinking, some spare capacity, alternative suppliers, and buffer stock can be strategic protection. The second is optionality and flexibility. Anti-fragile supply chains do not lock themselves into one route, one supplier, one production model, or one plan. They create options so they can move quickly when conditions change. The third is learning loops. Every disruption creates data. Anti-fragile organizations capture those lessons and turn them into better processes, stronger controls, and smarter decisions. The fourth is decentralized decision-making. When decisions sit too far from the point of disruption, response can be slow. Anti-fragile systems push authority closer to where the problem is happening. Finally, they encourage experimentation and innovation. Small, controlled failures can reveal better ways of working before a major crisis exposes the weakness. Slack, options, and learning convert disruption into strength. One of the biggest causes of fragility is over-reliance. If a supply chain depends on one supplier, one region, one route, one system, or one transport mode, then a single failure can have a major impact. That is why diversification and decentralisation matter. Multi-sourcing gives organisations more than one route to supply. Regional supply bases can reduce exposure to long international routes. Multimodal transport options allow organisations to move between road, rail, sea, or air when disruption occurs. Local production or distributed capability can also make the network harder to break. This is not about adding complexity for the sake of it. It is about reducing single points of failure. A decentralised supply chain is often more adaptable because it does not depend entirely on one central node, one command structure, or one perfect plan. When disruption happens, distributed capability allows the organisation to respond faster and recover more effectively. The key message is simple. Diversity and decentralisation make the network harder to break. You cannot adapt to what you cannot see. That is why visibility is central to antifragility. Real-time data, predictive analytics, supplier risk monitoring, demand sensing, and scenario tools all help organisations detect weak signals earlier. If a supplier is struggling, a port is becoming congested, demand is shifting, or transport capacity is tightening, early warning gives the organisation more time to respond. But visibility alone is not enough. The supply chain also needs modularity and flexibility. A modular operation can switch products, suppliers, markets, routes, or processes more quickly. It does not collapse simply because one part of the system changes. Flexible systems reduce the impact of single-point failures because they create alternative pathways. This is where digital tools, operational design, and leadership need to work together. Data helps you see the problem. Modularity gives you options. Flexibility allows you to act. Together, they turn disruption from a surprise into a manageable decision point. The key message is this: you cannot adapt to what you cannot see. Antifragility depends on learning. That means organisations need to become more comfortable with controlled experimentation. Small pilot projects, limited trials, and cross-functional tests can uncover better options before a major disruption forces change under pressure. Small failures are not always bad. In the right environment, they create insight. They show where processes are weak, where assumptions are wrong, where data is missing, and where the supply chain needs more flexibility. But to do this properly, organisations must measure beyond cost. Cost will always matter, but it cannot be the only measure. Anti-fragile supply chains also measure time to recovery, adaptability, service under stress, customer impact, decision speed, supplier flexibility, and learning captured from disruption. Sometimes just-in-case thinking will outperform pure just-in-time thinking, especially where the cost of failure is high. The important point is that capability matters more than efficiency alone. If we only measure cost, we may miss the things that make the supply chain stronger. Anti-fragility matters because supply chains are operating in a polycrisis world. Climate change, trade wars, cyber attacks, energy disruption, geopolitical instability, labour shortages, and rising customer expectations are all reshaping risk. In this environment, the supply chain is no longer a back-office function. It is a strategic asset. The organisations that treat supply chain purely as a cost centre may struggle when disruption hits, but organisations that build adaptable, intelligent, and learning-based supply chains can turn disruption into advantage. They can move faster while others hesitate. They can seize opportunities while competitors scramble. They can maintain customer trust when others fail to deliver. And they can use disruption to improve their operating model over time. That is the real value of anti-fragility. It is not simply about surviving the next shock. It is about becoming better because of it. In disruption, stronger systems can pull ahead. The key message from this presentation is that anti-fragile supply chains do more than survive. They improve through disruption. Resilience remains important. Every organisation still needs the ability to absorb shocks and recover. But anti-fragility goes further by asking how the system can learn, adapt, and evolve after each shock. The best supply chains do not treat disruption as an isolated event to be forgotten once normal service resumes. They treat it as evidence about suppliers, data, processes, policies, people, inventory, transport, governance, and decision-making. To become anti-fragile, organisations need to design for options, visibility, decentralisation, and experimentation. They need to measure recovery, adaptability, and learning, not just cost. The future will not belong to networks that simply bounce back to where they were before. It will belong to networks that can bounce forward. So the final question is this: are you designing for yesterday's risks or tomorrow's uncertainty?